Hi everyone, this is our third lesson in the series, taking a look at Julius Caesar. Now within this video we're going to be looking specifically at some of the key themes within the play and also some of the key quotations, all in preparation to help you face the real exam. Look at the key themes of the play and attempt the challenges that follow. So in this video we're only going to be taking a look at 3 key themes within the play, and we'll look at more as the lessons progress throughout the next few weeks. So today specifically we're going to focus on the corrupting influence of power, betrayal and loyalty, and fate versus free will. So what I'd like you to do, thinking about each of these themes, is I'd like to consider how confident do you feel about each of these. Secondly, can you link any key characters to each of the themes? And then finally, can you record any quotations that relate to each of these themes? This is a really good practice, especially if a theme-based question comes up in a proper assessment. If you can also stretch yourself further, I'd like you to think about what we've covered in our previous videos and think which of these have we already covered, and see if you can summarise what you have learnt so far. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So on our left hand side then we have our themes. In the middle we have some quotations that you can link to these themes, and on the right hand side we have the characters that link to both of them. So for the first theme then we have fate versus free will, and we have the very common quotation that's often used, beware the Ides of March, and this is said by the soothsayer. Now for the second one we have betrayal and loyalty, and we've gone with a very common quotation as well, et tu Brute, then fool Caesar, and that of course is said by Julius Caesar himself. And our final one, this is a little bit more of an obscure quotation, but it is one that we went through in our previous videos as well, for the corrupting influence of power. So it says, why man he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus, and we petty men walk under his huge legs, and peep about to find ourselves dishonourable graves. And that of course comes from the character Cassius. So by the end of this video you'll be able to recall some of the key themes in the play, you'll be able to understand how to approach an exam question, and hopefully you will then be able to apply your understanding to attempt an exam response. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So this is the question that we're going to focus on today, and you will actually notice that within this question we've actually held back a little bit of information just to think about some of the challenges that we're going to go through in a moment. So the question says then, at this point in the play, Morellus and Flavorus are speaking to the commoners about their loyalty to Caesar. Starting with this extract, explain how Shakespeare presents the Roman masses as susceptible to manipulation. So the things I'd like to think about before we attempt this question are the following. So can you recall the act or the scene that the question is referring to? So when you do get a proper exam question like this, you will find that it will actually come with an extract, and it will tell you where that extract has come into play. I want to see if you actually know where it's came from based on your previous knowledge. Next, for our super challenge, I want you to think about the characters that have just been mentioned. So who are Morellus and Flavorus, and are they significant in the play? Try and justify your answer. Now this is a really important thing to go through, because if you think about actually the examiner's point of view, they want to make sure that you've got a good understanding of the play as a whole. So even if these characters might be considered either major or minor characters, just being able to have that understanding of who they are and their role in the play is going to have a real significance in your overall marks in the exam. Look at the extracts and identify any quotations that will help respond to the exam question. So if you'd like to download it, you'll see it just like a proper exam paper, and all of that link will be included below. Once you go through it as well, I'd like you to try and attempt the stretch and challenge task. Can you identify all of the judicious quotations in the extract? Now if you're not too sure what I mean when we're talking about the judicious quotations, these are the ones that have the most value in terms of the question that we're trying to answer. If you're not too sure how to access this, or you're having a little bit difficulty finding some of these quotations, please feel free to give us a comment and we'll try and walk you through it in more detail. Now what we're going to do is have a look at the student response to the exam question, and we're going to try and assess how well they've actually responded to the question. So this is what they've said then. Shakespeare presents the commoners as being happy to see Caesar. This is evident in the quotation. Have you not made an universal shout that timber trembled underneath her banks? This shows that the crowd are really happy to see Caesar. The poet has used a simile to illustrate they're celebrating so much at the sight of him that the ground actually starts to shake. So what I'd like to think about when you're looking at this response is, has the student selected an appropriate quotation? If you think back to the previous part of the video, what we were aiming for is a judicious quotation, which means something that is highly valuable and relates back to the question. Then for the super challenge, can you identify 2 or more ways that the response could be improved? And what we're going to do, we're just going to work through that one together. Now these are some of the common mistakes that I've seen within the exams over the last few years. Now the first thing, if we look at the very first sentence, it says Shakespeare presents the commoners as being happy to see Caesar. Now here is our first mistake. They're not actually referring to Caesar in this part. They're actually talking about something that's happened previously when they're referring to how the commoners have reacted at seeing Pompey, who is the previous ruler, if you like, of Rome. So what they've actually done here is they've misinterpreted the evidence, right? They're not talking about happy to see Caesar, they're talking about somebody else who had reign over Rome. This is evident in the quotation. Have you not made a universal shout that timber trembled underneath her banks? Now this is a really fantastic quotation. Essentially what we're looking at here is that they're saying to them, you've been so happy to see Pompey and the people that actually represent him and walk with him, that you've shouted so much that the very ground and everything that we stand on all kind of shakes with the uproar and the excitement that you're showing. And this actually shows how flippant the kind of crowd are, really. They can be loyal to one person one moment and completely abandon that loyalty in the next. Again, we can see when the student has started to do the analysis here that they've got it a little bit wrong again. They're not happy to see Caesar. This is a misinterpretation on their part. In addition, they've referred to Shakespeare as a poet. Now, although this isn't going to lose you loads of marks in the exam, technically he's not being a poet within the actual function of writing a play. He'd in fact be called a playwright. So even though Shakespeare was also a poet, we want to make sure that we're using the correct terminology when referring back to him. He has in fact used a simile. However, this isn't where all of our marks are going to lie. It does help to actually show that you understand the writer or the playwright's methods in this instance. However, it's not where our analysis needs to be. We need to be linking back to the question, which again they're not really doing. So they've used a simile to illustrate they're celebrating so much that the sight of him that the ground actually starts to shake. So yes, they are actually trying to interpret it. They've got a little bit of analysis, but there's no link to the question, and this is a little bit undeveloped. Hopefully you're able to identify those kind of mistakes within the extracts. If you've got anything else that you'd like to comment, please do leave one below. Now what we're going to do is have a look at a few key quotations that may apply to the question that we just looked at. Now this is going to be really important in terms of actually planning your response, because in the exam you're not just going to get quotations from the extract that they give you. What you need to do is actually show that you have a broader knowledge of the play as a whole. So what I'd like to do is have a look at the quotation, see if you can figure out what is missing from the blank spaces, and if you can attempt the stretch and challenge task, try and recall the act, the scene, or even the character that has said the words. So the first one says then, the fault, dear blank, is not in our blank, but in ourselves, that we are blank. For number 2, we have, there is a blank in the affairs of men, which taken at the blank, leads on to blank. For number 3, we have, oh, what a blank was there, my blank. For our next one, we have, the name of blank has a certain blank in it. Next we have, and therefore think of him as a blank, which hatched would as his kind grow blank. Class feedback. Check your answers against the full quotations. So number 1 then. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. So this has came from the first part of the play, where it is Cassius trying to convince Brutus to turn against Caesar. For number 2, there is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune, and that is Brutus in Act 4, Scene 3. Next we have, oh what a fool was there, my countryman, and that is Antony speaking in Act 3, Scene 2. This is when he's addressing the crowd, and think about the use of language that he has here. He refers to them as friends, countrymen, Romans, all of these very positive connotations as he tries to win them over and get them to believe in what he believes. Number 4. The name of Caesar has a certain power in it, and that speaker is Cassius in Act 1, Scene 2. And number 5. And therefore think of him as a serpent's egg, which hatched, would as his kind grow mischievous. And this is a fantastic quotation to use. Think about the religious imagery that's been used here. It's a very common technique that Shakespeare uses, and definitely an important one when you're thinking about character analysis. In terms of our next lesson, we're going to be going over the following things. So we're going to recall the next key events in the play. We're going to understand some more key quotations. And finally, you're going to be able to apply your understanding to attempt an exam style question. Just like today, the only big difference is going to be is that we're going to take a look in a bit more depth at the assessment objectives and try and get to grips with what really makes a successful response. Now if you need any additional support or help, the new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you've made it this far, guys, thanks ever so much for your support, and all the best with your work and revision in the future. Bye bye.